Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about the world, Jyotish, how it reflects the world, and also how it tends to affect your life, how the planetary movements affect your life. I'm a Vedic astrologer of some 35 years experience. I don't claim to be perfect, but I do try to give you the best analysis I can, given the information we have. So I'm coming to this week. This week has actually been a very sad week for me watching what's going on in the country, in the United States, and even all around the world. I'm thinking I'm going to do like a little bit of an in-depth analysis of the United States today, and I'll do a partial analysis of some other countries, and we'll call it. And I'll do your your weekly charts, but I think we're going to call it quits after that and look for the time um, elements connected and the factors connecting um, the events in the United States and events around the world as they manifested previously, and I see if I can find some parallels there. Okay, so and that's really what you have to do. I tend to have come from an historical background. I like to understand things in terms of history, what actually happened, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels between earlier epics in the United States and what's going on right now. So the first thing I want to do was to ask you to subscribe, like, share the video with your friends, and also with anybody you think might be interested in this. So so I'm deputizing you as my promotional people. You can get my good thoughts and prayers, but um, I'm not in a position to give up money right now. Also, I would ask you to look up our store Crystal Expectations at 854 Brock Avenue that's 854 Brock Avenue, BROCK, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, 02744. You can see me there for readings, but we have a lot of other nice stuff there, like books, candles, incense, uh, various statues from spiritual practices all around the world. And we've been open for actually longer than I've been an astrologer. So it's a well-established business, and if any if anybody is interested in asking about what we have at the store, you can contact me at 508-525-0001. You can also, that's 508-525-0001. You can also email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Facebook on Crystal Expectations has a website. And so does Northeast Institute of Vedic Astrology and Studies. So if you'd like to study with me or get a reading, obviously you're welcome to contact me through either of those devices, through either my cell phone or through that's the cell phone number, or through email to contact me. I don't bite, and I'm fairly easy to talk with, and I can also figure out whether or not you want to study, whether or not we would be a good match. And if we're not a good match, I can refer you to other astrologers to study with. So again, I'm not exclusively looking at this for my own self-aggrandizement, although certainly that is one of the purposes of this channel. So essentially, let's go on to the real meat. Let me get out of the promotional parts of this. Let me get onto the meat of the analysis. I'm going to pull up the U.S. chart first of all. I took three periods in history. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not what I wanted to show. Let me get that down. Sorry, folks. This is a real life drama of live. Uh, so there's always room for error. Now, one thing I do have to tell you is that we are getting very close to what I would call a precipice over the next couple of months. And when I say that, that doesn't mean the entire country is going to collapse or the world's going to go to war or anything like that. That's not the idea. But let me pull up the U.S. map. Let me pull up the map of what's going on right now. So if I can pull up the now chart, there we go. All right, so it's February 1st, 2026. The time is currently 3:29:55 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and in the afternoon. And the moon is in the first house, so that's a good start to it. Um, but we have, now look at all these planets over here. This is what I'm concerned about. All right, so essentially, whenever you have these planets forming a large combination, usually it's more deadly if Saturn's involved, if I'm honest, or it's more, and if Rahu and Ketu are in angles from each other. So what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, just to give you like a quick analysis, we had the 2001 event when Mercury was in the first house, and we had um, Rahu and Ketu in sort of angular positions from that. So Mercury was exalted, and we had a lot of planets clustering and acting in opposition to each other. So we had a lot of planets in this sign, and this sign. Okay, so but right now we have planets that are, so we have an exalted Mars right now. So when Mars is exalted, basically it's difficult when Mars is exalted, and especially if Mercury is with Mars, it's very difficult to get the truth out of any situation. And again, I feel like I'm repeating myself an awful lot with this combination, but believe me, Mercury and Mars um, are really, they're the ultimate lawyer planet. They're the ultimate um, making up things planet. So essentially, uh, I think it's good. I'm just going to digress for a second to what's happening in Minnesota. I think it's good that they're doing an investigation of what's happening in Minnesota. I think it's good that Tom Homan has gone to Minnesota to work with Governor Walz to see if they can do this the proper way, the way it should have been done from the beginning, which was essentially having the state cooperate with ICE agents. But Walz is going to have political trouble on that, even though he's not running again. He's going to have political trouble from that, mainly because um, I think a lot of people don't want to see a peaceful resolution of this. They just don't want to see the activity of deportation undertaken at all, and they want to throw Trump out of office, and that's really all they can see in front of their faces. So, so, so essentially, but there is a cautionary note in that whenever we have large clusters of planets coming together. Notably absent from this combination is Jupiter and Saturn, which may lessen it a little bit. But you have one, two, three, four planets happening, and they'll roughly all of them will be in conjunction with Rahu over the next couple of months. Okay, and then they won't follow exactly. Okay, so there'll be a little bit of a break off. But I think one of the things you're seeing right now is one of the reasons that people are so ideologically fixed is because of Saturn being in Pisces. Okay, so I looked at somebody on the internet had mentioned, well, they're starting to break down on astrologers in other countries right now, but they're not. The prohibitions aren't quite as so. Essentially, whenever there's a Saturn and Pisces combination or a Rahu and Pisces combination, you'll see a lot of mystical practices um, brought into question or just shunned overall. There's an attempt to control people with this combination. This is what's happening to a certain extent with the trouble that Iran is facing, and also to a certain extent with what's happening in the United States, and that is ideological positions. If they weren't fixed when Saturn was in Aquarius, which was a position over the past 2.5 years, they're definitely fixed now. And when I mean fixed, they're stuck. So Pisces tends to be a more philosophical sign, a less rigid sign. And when you have a combination like this, it makes it more difficult for people to reason um, and to discuss calmly what situations are. And again, you had civilians um, or demonstrators get shot. And I tried to look up similar events in the past um, to what's happening right now, and we're going to look at those maps in a few seconds. But basically, this combination right here is not good as it moves towards Rahu, which will be there next month, and then it'll move a little bit closer to Saturn. You'll have a little bit of a separation though, and I think that March to April will be kind of a critical turning point. Now, first of all, there's an eclipse in late February, so that's one thing we're looking at. And also, the other thing is this combination of Sun, Mars, Venus, Mercury will tend to take Rahu, which is a rather fanatical planet anyway, and just amp it up a bit. So this tends to me to be sort of like it'll make people more aggressive. Now again, keep something in mind. There, I'm not justifying. I I would never justify any shooting, okay? But there were violent attacks when Musk um, was trying to be more economical. Maybe that's the best way I can put it. And all so there were actually violent attacks during that period, and there were also um, demonstrations. And so this isn't really such a new thing we're seeing in Minneapolis and Los Angeles and uh, other parts of other parts of the country. Portland, I think, is having some demonstrations. But one of the new things is there's also in a lot of states there are also like huge allegations of fraud going on, which again kind of fits in with this Sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury creeping up on Rahu because Rahu tends to Ketu is a thief, but Rahu tends to engage in these rather bizarre criminal conspiracies to defraud people. So So whenever you see Rahu strong in a chart, you have to watch out for people either one overpromising or two um, deceiving in order to um, engage in some form of thievery or crime. And Rahu is very strong right now. It's right in the middle of a sign. So this is a multifaceted event happening right now. It's not just a um, it's largely is centered on the protests, obviously, but it's also centered on allegations of fraud, theft, and investigations that are being promised by the United States government. Now, whether or not there's any truth to those allegations, I don't know, but they're happening in a lot of what are called blue states. And if my chart interpretation skills are correct, there has been considerable fraud committed um, in those states. But when that Venus, Mars, Mercury, Sun comes up here, I think that combination will make people more violent, more aggressive. Mars is heading towards its highest degree of exaltation, and it'll engage with Rahu, and that'll make people kind of lose their minds a bit, despite the best efforts to tamp things down. I think also the other thing you have to keep in mind is that so again, like I said, I'm not justifying demonstrations, but the other thing I'm hearing a lot is people saying there's going to be civil war in the United States. Well, I actually took the liberty of looking at the start of the Civil War in the United States. The start of the Civil War in the United States uh, obviously wasn't um, the actual legal start of the Civil War was the attack on Fort Sumter. But let's look at the let me see if I can get this down there. Okay, so I have the Fort Sumter. Oops, sorry, I have the Fort Sumter chart we can look at. So that was a real geographical. Now this could be a geographical um, civil war, but because essentially it's based around, it would probably be based around the blue states. Okay, and the blue states are in very specific parts of the country. But if you look at the chart over here, there aren't a lot of factors that this current chart has right now that align very, very well with the Fort Sumter attack. Now, again, keep in mind, I'm aware that the foundation of the Civil War to essentially started when the Constitution was written, because the United States allows slave states to maintain slavery. You know, they could have, and there were numerous compromises um, and political concessions which allowed the practice to keep on going. There was also an economic component to it, which is currently a factor in the United States as well, because we're looking at a country which is trying to assert economic dominance and maybe even territorial dominance. Um, but the territorial dominance isn't in the United States, but it is in certain select areas of the United States. So, so there are certain overlaps, obviously, but this was an official, actual war. So we're not talking about that. And like I said, it took decades for this to come together. So this particular attack has very little in common with the chart we're looking at right now. The only commonality is the conjunction of Sun Venus and Mercury within about one sign. And there's not a whole heck else going on. K2 is in the United States, seventh house in Gemini. Jupiter's in the eighth house. So Jupiter will be in the eighth house this coming summer. So that's a dangerous time. But it's also potentially a good time. And but Rahu is nowhere near Sagittarius at this particular point in time. K2 is around, Rahu and K2 are around 5 years away from that combination. And the major planetary period will be different as well. So because the United States Civil War started during a Venus Mahadasha, interestingly enough. So let's look at something a little bit more relevant. Let's look at the Kent State shootings. And didn't Civil War so much, um, but we have Saturn, we have Rahu in the ninth, in the who's in the 10th house. I'm sorry, in the ninth house of the U.S. chart. So this is actually closer to where we currently are right now. Saturn's a little bit. So for those of you who aren't familiar historically, the Kent State shooting was a demonstration against the bombing of Cambodia, the carpet bombing of Cambodia. And I was actually really, wasn't involved because I was in high school and I couldn't really take part in these demonstrations. I didn't have either the wherewithal or the access to universities at that time. So I went to college a year in the following year. But I was interested in organizations like Students for a Democratic Society. So so it's not like this is an alien um, state of mind for me to look at. Um, so Mars is aspecting K2, that's difficult. And this during the Kent State shootings. And this looks a lot more like the Kent State shootings. Or if we go back a little bit further, we have something similar happening. Democratic Convention of 1968. And for those of you who weren't alive at the time, the Democratic Convention was a real mess. There was one person killed. There was, I think, 150 policemen injured, 500 civilians injured. It was essentially the Chicago cops were using billy clubs on people. Just like, and there were like mass arrests going on. This was also the same week that Czechoslovakia was invaded by Russia after Czechoslovakia had gone through its liberalization process. So it wasn't just one thing happening in the world, So this was one of the things that um, this was the so we're sort of between those two events. If you notice, Saturn is going retrograde, is heading back into Pisces. Now, Saturn won't be in that position really where it's um, going to um, go into Aries for about another couple of years. But these two events seem close enough to me to be more similar to what's going on right now. And we didn't have a civil war then. I don't believe we're going to have a civil war now. Okay. But I would look for a lot more civil unrest, similar to the riots in the 1960s in the 1960s. Let me just pull up the United States map. So this is what I'm basing it on. I'm basing it on historical precedent. Similar combinations. And the United States during, so the first Rahu Ketu subperiod in the United States history was 1786 to 1787. The United States was in sort of a chaotic state. That's what led to the Constitutional Convention. It was in kind of a lawless state. The second one was in 1906. Rahu Ketu was in 1906. And this is the start of the Civil War, 1859, Venus Rahu. Um, so you can see right down there, we were in a Venus Rahu period. So if the flip equation holds true, well, we have a Rahu Venus period coming up in, let me just move forward. Let's see whether or not this holds for. So in 1906, the United States engages in the Spanish-American War, the Philippines, all that other stuff, all that other fantastic stuff when we were in the process of empire building. Um, by the way, there's a guy talking about the end of civilizations, and I really don't think he has any idea what he's talking about. So don't get. Um, it's not impossible for civilization to end, but it looks unlikely. So let's go. Let's move the date up. So when we had the civil unrest in the United States was mainly between 1965 and 1972, although there were certainly some echoes of it around 1972 to 1976. But a lot of this was during a K2 sub-period, and K2 Rahu was when the Democratic Convention, essentially that particular took place. K2 Saturn is K2 Jupiter. So the students in Kent State didn't get a lot of sympathy from the American mainstream, to be honest with you. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at these events. August of 1968, that propelled, or it helped Nixon assume power, to be honest with you. So again, I'm old enough to remember these events. A lot of my listeners aren't, and a lot of my listeners who lived during those times may have different interpretations than I do. But this really kind of hurt the Democrats' chances at election in 1968. Usually during K2 subperiods, so 1991, there's, let me just see now, 1972, 1979, 1991 to 1992. We have a little bit of a recession. And during the Sun Mahadasha, this was the Bill Clinton presidency up until the Moon Mahadasha in 1998. And scandals broke out. Moon is in Aquarius. It's not well placed in Aquarius in the US chart. 2008, the housing crash or the world economic panic. And then 2015, almost like clockwork, you have somebody like Donald Trump come out of nowhere and essentially um, become the focal source of the country. And this was also a reform period. 1895 to 1913 was also a reform period. This was the period of women's suffrage, and or the start of it at least. And right after that, we have a Jupiter subperiod, which essentially pushed us more closely into war uh, in the Jupiter Saturn subperiod. But if you look at these periods, so we have a Rahu Venus subperiod in 2027, April of 2027. Um, will that give some kind of like major civil unrest? I'm assuming we're going to see civil unrest between March 27th of 2026 and April 14th of 2027. You may even see some overseas adventures, but I don't think Greenland is really uh, on the map of a conquest. Um, I'm expecting more of um, a war on foreign shores. K2, right now, one of the things that's triggering a lot of these protests also is that we have a cluster of planets going over natal K2 in the United States chart. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see, like I said, riots akin to the 1960s in the major cities happening all throughout the summer. So this can work favorably for, oddly enough, this can work favorably for the Republicans because if on how the story is spun, because it's essentially, the Democrats can say this is because of ICE um, techniques. That's one thing, but I have a funny feeling that after July, there's going to be a lot of um, revelations about both parties that will reflect poorly on both parties. But I think it'll reflect more poorly on the Democrats, if I'm being honest. And the reason I'm saying that is because Jupiter will be aspecting Saturn, and it's getting Saturn over here in this particular chart. Now, again, I could be wrong about this. This could actually benefit the Democrats and catapult them to a position of authority. However, the next year or so after March, I think is going to be rather disruptive and also hopefully not too violent, but pretty violent. So I'm not trying to be negative. Again, very great time for creative stuff, great time for spiritual development. That's one of the positive parts of K2 subperiods. It'll open up new opportunities. AI will probably skyrocket during that particular period of time, just because K2 is essentially an unknown quality. But I would also expect to see some sabotage from foreign powers, especially in internet communications and also services. So that's my grand announcement for this week. Um, take it as you will. If I mean, there is a chance um, for increased cooperation between uh, the Democrats and the Republic and Homeland Security, especially if but also there's increasing chance of radicalization on the part of the Democrats, and maybe even radicalization on the part of the Republicans, but it's more likely going to affect the Democrats because Saturn's closer to Rahu than Jupiter is. So Jupiter tends to be what I would call a conservative planet. It tends to like to do things basically through normal channels. And so let's see what happens. Now, I want to look at Iran for just 1 second. So it doesn't look like civil war, not in the conventional sense that we've known in the United States. Certainly there will be conflict in the streets, though. One, two, three, four. Possible attempt to overthrow the president, possible attempt at a presidential assassination. Yeah, definitely. Um, and that's very dangerous. That looks very dangerous around, I would say around September this year. The other thing is we have this map for Iran. Iran has, so some people are saying, well, we can't believe here we're told not to believe that ICE agents are killing people, then we can't believe that Iran has killed 20 to 30,000 people. It's easy to believe that about Iran. And I'm not knocking Iran as a country, but the party that's in power is very ruthless. So, um, so if you have a combination like this, where you have a lot of planets going into to Aquarius over the next month or so, which is one of the weak spots in Iran's chart. Let me do this. More likely that Iran will have some kind of revolution or some kind of overthrow of government. I would even say by March this coming year. And the other thing is, so this is a seat of power. Um, hoping it's not going to be bloody, but with Mars being in that combination along with K2, I don't see how it cannot be. So let's look over to India. Oh, sorry. I misspelled India. My apologies, folks. I misspelled India. Oh no. What will happen to me? Okay. Just a bad typist. That's my defense. All right. So India has government are certainly anticipated in India. Um, Potential for violence is indicated between now and I would say 2027, February of 2027. Possible, um, although Rahu is exalted in this chart, Rahu is very well placed, but there can be some foreign adventures on India's part. So let's hope it's not war with China. That would be really horrible. But China is, let's look at Japan. Japan in particular is really getting sick of China. And they're in a K2 Mahadasha until 2032. So now this is interesting because they just elected their first female prime minister. And let me just go back. And they have one of the strictest immigration policies in the world now. Okay, so I think for those of you looking for the United States to look for countries to uh, model their immigration policy after, I think you're going to be disappointed because there seems to be a political divide even in Europe as far as allowing unlimited immigration. And so essentially, the former Eastern Bloc countries like Poland, down through Hungary and Romania, are very strict about immigration. They are very aware of how close they are to Russia. They're very aware of how vulnerable they are to Russia. Countries like France, Germany, and Germany is even showing some signs of trying to deregulate itself um, during the recent summit. Um, and England and Ireland, there are massive popular reforms or not reforms, but there are massive populist parties forming in those countries. And right now, for the first time in the UK and since I can remember, the Reform Party is leading both the Tories and Labour, Conservatives and Labour. So the Conservatives are basically our Republicans, like moderate Republicans, pre-Trump Republicans, and a little bit to the left of that. And the Labour Party is um, basically progressive Democrat right now. So, um, so basically, the Reform Party is more like um, a milder kind of nationalistic party, but it's not a fascistic party. And Ireland has, and those countries who have absorbed, um, compared to their population base, have absorbed much higher levels of immigrants, of illegal immigrants, or even new populations. Some of them are legal immigrants, uh, in comparison to their native population than the United States has. So, so those countries are feeling the brunt of this. Italy is really kind of um, very anti-immigration, very anti-illegal immigration. And it looks like there's a new alliance forming between Italy and Germany right now because France is going a little bit. France was opposed to the treaty with South America, and Italy and Germany want to open that trade route. So I think we're seeing signs. I'll look at the European Union in more detail next week, but we're seeing more and more signs of schisms in the European Union. It doesn't mean it's going to disintegrate overnight, but there are some problems over there definitely, and I'll look at those charts more aggressively. But right now, like I said, I'm more focused on the East because I think that's more dangerous. Um, Germany, let's look at Germany. So Germany has Saturn in the first house, so it's a very careful society now. Sun, Venus, and Mercury in the 10th house. How is that for a wealth combination? But they are experiencing some problems because Saturn's aspecting their 10th house of wealth. Um, there's Rahu's in their 8th house. Jupiter's in their Rahu's in I'm sorry in their 7th house. So that does mean there'll be changes in partnerships. And Jupiter right now is in their 11th house, so they want some new friends. They want some new allies. So let's go over to UK quickly. I want to see if do I have Italy's chart here. That'd be interesting. No, I don't. I only have the King of Italy, so we'll look at Italy next week. My apologies, folks. because I don't want to spend too much time on this. Um, but Italy looks like it's actually doing fairly well lately, comparatively speaking. UK. Kingdom. I wish I'll get out of Europe pretty soon. I want to look at it. Um, just gonna see if maybe I have it under England. So maybe I don't have UK in here. Yeah, try UK one more time. See, I do have UK. God almighty. See how different these two are. Oh, it's the same chart. Chart, financial strife. Um, Rahu's in the sixth house, so there are problems with people from other countries. Rahu usually stands for foreigners as well, or people from lands. And Saturn's also afflicting Rahu. Right now, UK is in a Rahu Venus subperiod, so it's really ripe for reform. Um, it's interesting how the United States chart and England's chart tend to, at least I've noticed, the social and political trends tend to mirror each other over the past. They certainly have over the past, I would say, 60 years or so. And chart is a mutable rising sign. Its moon is in Gemini, which is in a trine to the United States moon. But and Venus, let me just see where K2 is in the chart. K2 is in the first house. So, yeah, I'm trying to see for any, if there are any other linkages between the chart. Jupiter's in the chart connected with the press in the UK, or the sign connected with the press in the UK as Scorpio. And right now, the Lord of Scorpio is exalted but afflicted by accompanying planets. So that's why you're having UK come under so much heat for its reporting. Um, but again, it's a more right now in its current form, in its current Mahadasha, it's just really trying to shake off its confusion over who or what it wants to be. I think this has been true really since 2012. They've been in a lot of fluctuation between prime ministers. Um, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying it's been a revolving door of prime ministers in England, and the royal family a bit of a uproar. They were close to transition. Charles' health isn't good, so so again, this is a country that's in flux, and especially If Jupiter goes into the eighth house this summertime, you'll see a shift in power in summertime, maybe earlier, but definitely by the summer. So let's go over to the basic chart. Let's go on to your uh, weekly charts, and we'll go through those. So I may just do like one country a week as opposed to running these all. But these are global changes that are happening. They're not um, not localized. Everything is local, but everything is global now. And I think what's happened over the past 30 years, a lot of people have gotten a taste of what um, a consolidated Europe and a consolidated global marketplace looks like, and they're not happy. Some people obviously are very happy with it, but a lot of people who have lost their jobs, or a lot of people who are seeing their countries change into forms they can't recognize. Um, that's going to be upsetting. So again, I'm well aware that communities change over time. That's, I'm not dense in thinking that the United States or any country is going to stay the same as it was at a certain point in time forever. That's silliness. But the speed or the acceleration of the changes, especially in the countries I was talking about, has been difficult to absorb for these countries. And it hasn't only affected us, it's affected countries in Africa, it's affected countries in Asia. Um, the United States bears a lot of responsibility for that, but so does Europe and so does um, China, because all these countries have been moving at breakneck speed to remake the world. The United States has been kind of an agent of chaos over the past 60 years, even more aggressively over the past 30 years. And the European Union has essentially, it's good that it's broadened its marketplace, but they're exploiting labor, and so is China. And China is also in the process of exploiting um, freaking Africa and South America as the colonial powers did before China. So I think that there's plenty of blame to go around, but I don't think people are interested in blame so much as they're trying to figure out how to either slow things down or get things under control. So let's look at the chart for your life to get your life under control this week. Clever segue. And so let's look at Aries first of all. Aries is going to have a lot of work, a lot of focus on work life, a lot of responsibility, a lot of communications with people. As you'll notice, Venus and Mercury are close to within 1 degree of each other. There's no planetary war that occurs when the two planets are within 1 degree of each other, but that happened earlier this week, and that was also when the shootings um, occurred, or when the shootings started to ratchet up. So you're saying to yourself, well, Venus and Mercury are pretty peaceful planets. Well, Mercury is with Mars, and it tends to be affected by the planets it's surrounded with. So if Mercury is winning planetary war, which it was earlier this week, there'll be some kind of break in logic, okay, and compassion because Venus is overwhelmed. When Venus is winning planetary war, there'll be more of a focus on justice, and you can see things actually. There was an attempt to start to calm things down when Venus went from being ahead of Mercury to being behind Mercury. So there's an attempt being made to calm things down, I think. So that so I'm just going to make that particular point. But this will also be true in your work life areas. You'll be attempting to calm things down and to move forward productively. So there's been a lot of disruptions over the past week. Rahu is in the 11th house, good for financial gains. Saturn's in the 12th house. We'll see what it's doing in the Navamsha chart because I don't want to keep on saying there should be some surprising gains from Saturn this week. So that's not necessarily bad. But if we're looking over here in the birth chart, the expenditure pattern is still pretty strong for Aries. Jupiter's in the third. That gives new ambition, new goals. And Moon is in the fourth, so that gives some peacefulness at home. Still some problems with kids. Kids are getting a little bit crazy or a little bit out of control, but I think this will be sort of like its peak point over the next couple of weeks. Let's go to Taurus. So that's April 15th to May 15th for Aries. May 15th to June 15th is for Taurus. This is using the sidereal or star-based zodiac. And Taurus's lord is Venus. Venus is located in the ninth house. You'll see a lot of improvement in work life for this sign, a lot of contact, a lot of additional knowledge gained, both through effort and through communication. So that's good. It gives good leadership responsibilities to this sign. Rahu's in the 10th house, not really able to implement a lot of these things, but there'll be an attempt made. And Saturn's in the 11th house, so this can give good gain or good financial growth to this particular sign, but slowly. Jupiter's in the second, that's very good for financial growth. And Moon is in the third, so there'll be changing desires or reorientation of desires. Ketu's in the fourth house. You'll see some old leaders leave your business or your life. Um, let's see now, let's go on to Gemini. Gemini is also called Mithuna, Mithuna in Sanskrit. And that lasts from June 15th through July 15th. The sun sign does. The rising sign is going to differ. If you're born close to sunrise, that's going to be your rising sign. If you're born 2 hours after sunrise, then Cancer will be your rising sign. But a lot of people don't. Um, but these are, and it changes roughly every 2 hours. So let's go over here to Gemini. The Lord of the first house is in the eighth. This will make this sign feel like it has to dig or investigate people. It'll be afraid that people close to it are lying or misrepresenting themselves to it. Moon is in the second house. Moon is in Cancer. That's a very good placement. It's in its best nakshatra, Pusha, which can give increased financial success to this particular sign. Ketu's in the third house. A certain amount of fearlessness is to be expected. We've already spoken about all these planets in the eighth house, unexpected gains, but also there's a feeling you really can't do much to change your life at this particular point in time. That'll change within about 2 weeks. Rahu's in the ninth house in this chart, so there'll be this desire to gain more financial growth, and Saturn's in the 10th. A lot of increased work activity. For Cancer, Cancer lasts between July 15th and August 15th, roughly. If you know your moon sign and you know your moon is in Cancer, you can use this information as well. Um, but it would have to be sidereal Cancer. It wouldn't be, so your moon would be in Leo if we were looking at this. And actually up to around 23. So actually up to around mm, around 11 degrees, 11 to 12 degrees of Leo. Uh, if you know your Western moon sign. So if you don't, we can just use the sun sign and that's fine. So Cancer goes from July 15th to August 15th, and you have K2 in the second house. This can indicate some attempts to steal from you, but also some lack of communication, some desire to be isolated or alone. You have a lot of enemies in this chart right now, or a lot of opposition in this chart right now. You'll be able to work your way out of it. Um, and also a lot of relationship potential. There's a lot of focus on relationships in this chart right now. So essentially, if you're Cancer, you'll have a lot of people interested in you relationship wise, but some people not handsome but not honest. But some people also very entrepreneurial will be very interested in you. Rahu's in the eighth house. That can indicate for the sign there's some element of conspiracy against the sign. Saturn, but again, I wouldn't take that too much to heart because basically it requires more investigation or more research of the individual, and conspiracy can be illusory for this particular sign. Um, Saturn's in the ninth house, so slow but steady progress is indicated for this sign. Jupiter's in the 12th house, good potential for saving money. And let's see, did I miss anybody? No, I don't think I did. So a lot of focus on long-term relationships though for the sign, a lot this week. For Leo, um, Leo goes from August 15th to September 15th in Vedic astrology, and K2 is in the first house. Again, I tend to view this as being almost a Raj Yoga for this particular sign because this is K2's birth sign. So K2 feels very much at home here. K2 blots out. So why is Leo K2's birth sign? Well, if it weren't for the sun, there would be no solar eclipses. Okay, so K2 is actually born out of the sun. It hides the sun through use of the moon, but it's essentially, and what it'll do is it can make this sign come under a lot of attack, but it can also make the sign very brave, very emboldened, very aggressive, very uh, unconcerned with consequences. Moon's in the 12th house, but again, able to save. Jupiter's in the 11th house, able to gain whatever it aspires to. And we have Rahu in the seventh house, so there'll be a lot of fame for relationship partner or a lot of recognition for relationship partner. Saturn's in the eighth house. You'll get fear from people who are either conservative or a little bit cautious about life. And but like I said, there is a certain amount of recklessness with the sign, so the sign should be careful in public places or in terms of driving or even in terms of putting yourself at jeopardy in accidents. So this isn't a bad chart for Leo, but again, like I said, caution is advised. For Virgo goes from September 15th through October 15th in Vedic astrology. Um, K2's in the 12th house. That's not a bad placement. It actually makes the sign more interested in spirituality than in material wealth. Moon is in the 11th house will give some good financial gains for the sign. Jupiter's in the 10th house. It will increase career opportunities. Saturn's in the 7th. Not a good time for relationships unless they're work-based relationships. And when I say work-based, connected exclusively with work, not for dating purposes, okay? But relationships will be for the purposes of getting jobs done. Mars, Venus, Sun, and Mercury are in the 5th house. A lot of creative energy for the sign. And Rahu's in the 6th house. A lot of ability to beat off competitors. But I want to focus on this 5th house because this also gives the children of the sign a lot of additional responsibilities and a lot of additional, um, but again, it can also give a lot of additional luck and a lot of additional happiness. So this isn't a bad placement. For Libra, Libra is the 7th sign of the zodiac. It lasts from October 15th to November 15th in Vedic astrology. And the Lord is Venus. It's in the 4th house, along with a series of other planets. So it's very ambitious. It wants to get a lot done, but it's kind of, its focus is spread across too many areas right now to get a lot done. And as a matter of fact, earlier in the week, it was probably a little bit discouraged or a little bit unhappy because of that awareness. But Mars is in the 4th house and should give a potential for gain through real estate and also through relationship partner or family. Mercury and Venus, Sun, this sign will be very educationally focused. With Rahu in the 5th, it will grab as much education or creative work as it possibly can. Saturn's in the 5th house, in the 6th house, excuse me, and that aspects the 12th house, so it can give outflows of money based upon, excuse me, based upon um, illnesses or sicknesses to pets. So, and Virgo also is prone to that particular problem. But overall, this is not a bad week for Libra. It will give some additional financial gain. It will focus a lot on career this week. So this looks like a pretty auspicious week. Also, one thing I didn't mention, which I feel really negligent about, is it's a full moon today, right? So it's what's called a Purnima moon in Vedic astrology. So, um, yeah, so let's see if it's showing that. It's just past a Purnima moon, but it is still a very auspicious moon. So that tends to indicate it's a time to both start, both finish old projects and start new projects. And as a matter of fact, as I'm talking to you right now, it is nearly full. Yeah, it'll be full before the end of the day. So this is interesting. So, so the moon's at 18 degrees, 17 minutes, and the sun is at 18 degrees, 47 minutes. So this is kind of an auspicious day. So if you want to become a student of mine, sign up really soon. Uh, but uh, yeah, this is a very good day for starting things. Um, Also, if you would like to be on the show or would like to share ideas with me, please get in touch, 508-525-0001. So what should Libras expect? Like this week, heavy expenditures, though, always, especially connected with home. And also, I would say insatiable creativity and a lot of work obstacles, okay? So this is not a bad week for Libra. There's only one detrimental placement, I would say, in this entire chart, and that's Saturn in the sixth. But this really isn't that bad because Saturn tends to thrive in the sixth house. So for Libras, a pretty good week. For Scorpios, so Scorpios, Vrishika, one of my favorite Sanskrit sign names, Vrishika has, or Scorpio starts November 15th, goes roughly to December 15th, and its Lord is in the third house, along with a cluster of other planets that have to do with uh, work, and luck is good, and relationships are good, but there can be a little bit of a problem with friends and also with self-confidence for the sign. But this is basically a good chart placement for the Lord of the first house to be in the third house of desires and ambitions. So this sign will have a lot of desires or ambitions, a little bit overwhelmed by these currently. Rahu's in the fourth, gives a strong desire for learning. Saturn's in the fifth. A little bit unlike Libra, this will give a lot of discipline to this particular sign. And Jupiter's in the eighth house, so a lot of spiritual discovery. Ketu's in the moon is in the ninth house, as we said before, so that indicates good luck as a full moon. Ketu's in Leo, which can indicate shifts or changes in career, but for the better. For Sagittarius, that's Danus. Sagittarius starts between December 15th and January 15th. And this particular sign placement, the Lord of Sagittarius is in the seventh house. So it gives a lot of focus on long-term relationships. Venus, Mars, Sun, and Mercury are in the second house. Good potential for financial growth, actually. Rahu's in the third house. Good for gains. Saturn's in the fourth house, but a lot of obligations, especially connected with parents or older people. Jupiter's in the seventh house, is in the seventh house, as we said before. Moon is in the eighth. A lot of investigation of metaphysical or spiritual subjects. Ketu's in the ninth. This isn't a bad placement. This can give you unexpected opportunities for growth, and you'll learn from unexpected or people you wouldn't necessarily learn to expect to learn from. So this is not a bad week for Sagittarius either. For Capricorn, our friend Capricorn, who has all the planets in it, January 15th through February 15th, roughly, or February 14th. Mercury, Mars, Venus, Sun are in the first house. Venus and Mercury and also Mars are good for what's called Adana or Dana and Raj Yoga. So that gives the sign the potential for increased income. But Sun also boxes the sign in and makes it a little bit feel like it has to hide things from the government, or also um, is worried a little bit worried about investments. Saturn, Rahu's in the second house. It's well placed in the second house. It's in a sign which it likes very much, so it should give good financial gains. Saturn's in the third house, a lot of self-discipline for the sign. Jupiter's in the sixth house, a lot of enemies from people who are more traditional than you are. Moon is in the seventh house. That's not a bad placement. Gives a lot of focus on new business partnerships. And K2 in the eighth, again, a time for metaphysical studies. For Aquarius, Aquarius lasts between February 15th and March 15th. And we have Rahu in the first house and K2 in the seventh. So this is an important combination. Rahu is going to make the sign more curious, more metaphysically and scientifically curious. K2 in the seventh is going to make it less inclined to be accepting of tradition or to value kings or royalty or precedent. So it'll be very nonconformist, weak for Aquarians, for people whose sun is in Aquarius. Saturn's in the second house, very slow gain of income. And we have also Rahu is sort of hemmed in by malefics in this chart. So that does tend to give a little bit of a crimp on the ability to earn. But essentially, Jupiter's in the fifth house. Luck will stay with this sign. Moon is in the sixth. You'll have only weak enemies. Who's in the seventh, you'll attract unusual or strange business and relationship partners, but they might be interesting. And finally, you have a cluster of planets in the 12th house, which means it's not a good time to get into new relationships, number one. Number two, it's also a good time to focus on trying to cut down expenses a little bit. Saturn in the second house, yeah, you're not going to get delivery from Saturn in this particular context. But Saturn likes your sign, so you should be okay, just in general terms. Finally, for Pisces, Pisces has Saturn in the first house. And so this will give, just in general, this is March 15th to April 15th, just in general, Saturn in the first house makes it an unwise time to indulge in any mind-altering or intoxicating substances. Jupiter's in the fourth house as the lord of the sign. Better to focus on book learning. Moon is in the fifth house, very creative time for this sign. Who's in the sixth house. This sign has to be we're concerned about accidents or kidney or liver problems. And finally, we go over here to the 11th house. Good for financial gains, but again, sort of like an obsessive spending pattern for the sign. So let's go to the time and space chart now that we're done with the actual signs. So let me see if I can. Now, last week, I do recall saying there was going to be problems in California, some kind of scandal. And there was. So California has both riots going on right now, and also a report just came out that Governor Newsom is going to be leaving office with an $18 billion deficit. And states, unlike the federal government, can't carry deficits. So it'll be interesting. Well, at least some states can. I know that Massachusetts can. I'm not sure how California laws are written. So I should correct myself right there. But the first line I noticed is there's a Jupiter line going right over the Aleutian Islands and eastern Alaska and down to Hawaii. So this can indicate abundant rainfall in Hawaii or else expansion or growth in Hawaii and Alaska. There's the Mars, Sun, Mercury, and Venus conjunction or over Western Alaska and northwestern Canada, going down into the Vancouver region. And I remember last week there was a big line, big Rahu line going through here. So that really does expose a little bit of a scandal. There are also riots in LA right now. Some people are calling them peaceful demonstrations. The footage I've seen doesn't look too peaceful to me, but I don't know. I could be getting it from the wrong source. So we have this combination right here, this Venus-Mercury combination. Riots should be, or the protests should be closed soon. But I would give that about another couple of weeks. And then maybe some other activity that breaks out there as well. Rahu is going down through Montana, Idaho, Colorado, um, Utah, and New Mexico. Can't believe I blanked out on Utah. And also Arizona, excuse me, not New Mexico, Arizona, and also in Northwest Mexico. So, and there's a Saturn line going to surrounding it. So we have all this territory between Rahu and Saturn lines. So this is one of the reasons you see Minnesota in the news so much. You're not seeing uh, North Dakota and South Dakota in the news so much right now, but um, there is a, but there are problems in obviously in Alberta and some of the western provinces in Canada. And again, this is a story you're not seeing on a great deal in national news because everybody's supposed to love being in Canada. But Alberta and at least one other district uh, are talking about a secession vote. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out. Um, there's a Rahu line, so there should be plenty of government scandal between Montana and Arizona and even into Mexico. And Saturn is going through Minnesota, Wisconsin, um, down through Missouri and through Louisiana. So, and even down into Mexico. So essentially, Mexico is stuck between a rock and a hard place. It can't do what it wants to do, and it can't be left alone. So it's it's interesting, and I heard this on president was trying to talk about the wall that Trump had put up in to exclude aliens, and there's some news story about her questioning our understanding of international law because we built a fence and because we built a law and how that works when you build a law. So I didn't quite read the details. I should have read them more closely. Um, but there is scandal in Mexico. There are people who bring people into the United States illegally for a living. There are there is uh, a very strong and very viable drug trade still in Mexico. Saturn over here can give some misery to people in Minnesota. Um, is that Wisconsin? I think it is. So let me just go on to this. So this Saturn line should bring some misery. The Jupiter line should offset it though around Missouri. And and this, there's a Mars, Saturn, Mercury, Venus cluster close to New England and also off the coast near Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So those countries should have some problems. There is a Jupiter line running through Cuba. I mentioned that before, and it's running through Venezuela all the way down into Brazil, through Bolivia, and touching upon um, Uruguay and Paraguay, and also Brazil again. So, and also Argentina. So that Jupiter line can bring a certain amount of abundance to this area, but communications will have to be cleaned up. Let's see now. There's a Mercury, Moon, Sun line. We've already discussed that. and so it's passing over the northeastern United States, and we have a lot of activity in Brazil, uh, a lot of not necessarily political scandals, but political events in Brazil over the next few weeks, and so I have Rahu encompassing that, um, along with Mercury in going over the Azores and going over Greenland. So there is some concern in Greenland that the United States will invade, which I don't think it will. I don't think it will need to. And let's see now. There's a Saturn line going over Scotland, England, Spain, and Northwest Africa, including Morocco. And I believe that's the lovely country of Libya, if I'm not mistaken, Libya or Algeria. I always tend to get the two confused. So let's see now. And there's also a Saturn line cutting through most of Western Africa, indicating that they're not happy with treated right now. Um, there's a Jupiter line going through um, Norway, Sweden, um, Poland, down through Romania, down into Italy, and into it looks like Libya proper. So, we have a Jupiter line running over, that Jupiter line runs all the way down through Greece from Norway and down to Italy. So it's touching on Italy's economy a little bit, and also it's improving West Africa's economy just a little bit. Right here, we have a Mars line over here, so this could indicate some fighting in Eastern Europe and also in Turkey, and Saudi Arabia looks ready to um, let's see now. So that Jupiter line, Mars line, increased potential for war or earthquakes along this line right here. Okay, so these people should take note of that and prepare carefully. It is running down Saudi Arabia over, God, what's the name of that country? I can't remember the name of that country. Ilhan Omar's homeland. Um, it's horrible. I can't remember the name of that country. Um, Somalia. Okay, I had to really put, and also over Madagascar. So this moon line will bring those countries into increased light for, and there was an attempted attack on Ilhan Omar, but it was number one, pretty affectional. Number two, there was some evidence claimed that it was staged. So I don't know that for sure. I'm just reporting what I heard. Um, but overall, from this chart, that illusory quality of the moon behaves well. Or Ukraine and Eastern Russia does look like there'll be a change in status for these countries, and maybe even more talking over the next couple of weeks. So that looks somewhat promising. There's a Rahu line running over Afghanistan, Pakistan. Um, I think it's Turkmenistan. I want to say Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan as well. And these are former Soviet socialist republics. Some of you may be familiar with Kazakhstan if you saw the Barat, like Sacha Baron Cohen. But basically, this particular combination does indicate um, it's concern about politics and maybe even some governmental scandals in those countries, and that includes Russia and India. Um, there's a Saturn line. Saturn and Rahu are having in India, so India looks like it's in a relatively tough spot right now, kind of facing its problems alone. Saturn line running through Ladakh and um, the rest of the area. I can't remember who else. Um, seeded to, or it was seeded to, but some problems in Ladakh. Um, what's the other country? Bangladesh, sorry, and far eastern India, like the Bengali region of India. Okay, over here we have a Jupiter line running through South Korea, next to China. All right, we're right through China, and also help Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines and Borneo. So that's pretty good. For finally, for all these lines over here, we have a line which can indicate some economic growth for China and also for North Korea, interestingly enough. And we have a lot of lines going over here off the coast of Japan. So that's a Mercury line, a Sun line, a Mars line, a Moon line, and a Venus line. So given these combinations, it's not hard to imagine um, areas will light up or become focuses of attention over the next week or so. Um, over here we have a cluster of planets dominating Australia, and this is, let me see now, we have a Sun, Moon, Mars line going through Papua New Guinea and through Australia. So the world's attention will actually be focused on India's economy and how it affects the world. So this looks like an interesting time for it. Not for India, yeah, for Australia's economy and how it affects the rest of the world. My apologies. For also, there's a Saturn line going over New Zealand. The economy isn't in shambles, but it's heading that way. So um, I think that's about all for me right now. This isn't a bad chart, by the way. It just represents some challenges along the way. I'm giving you those challenges as a way of advising you, as opposed to saying, oh, it's going to be a horrible week. It's not really. It's going to be more of a blast, but uh, you'll still feel the way. Okay? So that's it for me. Again, if you want to contact me, 508-525-0001. You can text me at that number, or you can email me at Gary Gomes, g@gmail.com. That's my entire name, Gary Gomes, add the letter G at gmail.com. Okay, so I think that's about it for me for this week. My name is Gary Gomes. Been a hard week of shoveling, been a hard week of everything. Hopefully next week will be a little bit easier on all of us. And I love you all. Thank you so much for putting up with me for so long. And thanks for watching. And again, if you want to see me cover other topics, please let me know. I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about a celebrity or about a, or so some people are predicting that AOC will be the presidential nominee for the Democrats in 2028, which would be fascinating. So it might be a good idea to look at her chart. But again, like I said, I'm flexible. I may forget about that idea next week. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I'm happy to address them for you. And I love you all. Please take care. Go forward and do good things and do things that you want to do and that will make you happy. Okay? Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye, everyone. And thanks for watching, as always.